Pretty much from the day I can remember, I was an active kid, maybe even a bit too active. I was never really a great student, but I always did well in sports, so it became my outlet for exploring the limits of my body and mind and helped me understand what I'm capable of if I dedicate myself to something. And though my pocket may be empty, I only discovered running as an adult. In November 2022, I was in Mauritius, working remotely, doing the whole digital nomad thing. I was getting a bit out of shape and I felt like I needed to physically challenge myself a bit more. Since I had a pair of running shoes with me, I signed up for a marathon. I quickly discovered that I loved the pain that came during training and the feeling of accomplishment after. I loved that I could train anywhere and any time, and I also loved the runner's high, the meditative zombie state, and I loved running faster and longer than I ever did before. After finishing my first marathon, I signed up for a 50-kilometer race and miraculously finished in second place. Next year was spent experimenting with different kinds of running, different kinds of surfaces, elevation, different distances. It very much felt like I discovered a new world and there were endless opportunities to explore. Just around the end of 2024, I felt like I was ready for a challenge that will shake me to my core. Little did I know what was waiting for me in the next few months.
Ayo. 2024 was a pretty interesting year for my running. I did a bunch of different 50K ultras. I did a 112K ultra, and my goal became qualifying for UTMB. So a lot of what I did was actually just getting those UTMB points. You need them to qualify. And at the end of 2024, I signed up for this Australian ultra called Mount Kosciuszko. It's a 50K, a little bit of vert in there. And it was a pretty traumatic experience for me. I ended up finishing, but after I finished, I started throwing up and I got put on IV and I was trashed. I was absolutely out of it for hours and hours. I didn't know how I was gonna get home the next day. And that was kind of the end of my running for 2024. So the next 2 months were me just hanging out in Indonesia with friends and family. And I didn't really run at all. It was just a complete reset. It was probably mid-January when the raffle for UTMB starts. And it's just basically a day where you find out if you qualified or not. And I had all the qualifying criteria I needed. I had the points, I had the previous, race distance I needed. And I found out I was not chosen. It was pretty heartbreaking. Actually, on that week, I was super sick. One of the worst health situations I've had in years. I couldn't really get out of bed. I was in Lombok for this surf trip, but I couldn't surf because of it. And I was so miserable. And I was like, okay, I need to set a goal. I need to get motivated. I need to get something on the calendar. And I figured that could be Ultra Balaton. Balaton is a huge lake, and Ultra Balaton is a one loop race around that lake. It's 211 kilometers, and there's not too much vert in there, but there's a fair amount. But it's definitely more about the monotone, 200 plus kilometer grind and just hammering through that on pavement, on road. So it's tough on the knees, tough on the joints. It's mentally a challenge. There's a 31-hour cutoff time, so you don't have time to rest for too long during the night. You can't sleep. It's really just a one go at this whole thing. And it's at the end of April, meaning in Hungary, you could get any kind of weather. Yeah, it was just a goal that really motivated me, and I thought it's a good replacement for UTMB. So at this point, I was on the road for 4 months straight. I was constantly with friends, and I didn't have any, personal space. I didn't have any real personal time. And I knew that if I wanted to do this crazy challenge, then I needed to really dial in my training. I really needed to change a few habits, and I just needed to figure out where am I gonna train for it. I was just watching some videos on YouTube and I saw this place called Da Nang. It's basically a vacation place in Vietnam. It's on the beach and it wasn't a very long flight away from Indonesia. So I thought, okay, I don't know anyone there. I could focus on my training, I could focus on my work, and I could get a lot of progress done there. So I packed my bags, flew there, and the next chapter kind of started. I was so happy when I got to Vietnam because I realized I made the best decision. The weather was absolutely perfect. It was between like 20 to 25 degrees Celsius most of the time. And there was this perfect road on the beach for 15 kilometers. You could get a lot of running in there. It was just a really good setup. Plus there was this place called Monkey Mountain, this mountain right outside the city. And there's plenty of vert there, so it's not only like stunning views and getting lost in nature and jungles and monkeys and all that, it's really good practice as well. So pretty much anything you needed for training, you had it there. And I started increasing the mileage. Usually my weeks started off around 100 kilometers and I built my way up slowly but surely to around 160 kilometers. And then kind of the peak of that training block was a 160K week where I did a marathon in Monkey Mountain, so with a bunch of vert on the Saturday, and then I had to do a 70K run on the Sunday on tired feet, and I ran a huge personal best on that 70K, and I knew, okay, I'm ready, this is gonna be good. I did the training, and now it's just time to taper. So this was the time when I booked my flights back to Hungary. There was maybe 2.5 weeks left until Ultra Balatons start. So getting back to Hungary was kind of a mixed bag. Unfortunately, I probably overtrained a bit and I had periostitis. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's basically an inflammation on the shin of my right leg, and every step hurt. It wasn't too bad, but it was definitely not like perfect for me to run. Regardless, I knew my mileage was just gonna go down and down. So the final 2 days before the competition, we went with Mark down to Balatonfüred. It's the place where the competition takes place. And I was lucky enough to be able to stay at Mark's mom's place. I had really nothing to worry about on those days, and I was ready to go. As soon as we were off, first few kilometers, maybe first 10 kilometers, all I was doing is just making sure my shin is okay, that the pain isn't too bad. But the weather was actually perfect. It was supposed to be raining the whole day and there was no rain. I was like, okay, let's go. And I just remember the great energy. So everyone was happy, people were chatting to each other, and that was the first 10 kilometers. And after that, I noticed that you keep bumping into the same people because you keep having the same pace as other people. So my running buddy for the race was this guy called Peter. And he was a very experienced runner and he's a great runner. And we just started talking and it was fantastic. We talked about anything and everything you can imagine. We had time, right? And I remember there was this kind of like pivotal moment when I asked him, oh, do you have a time goal in mind? And he said, oh yeah, I want to do sub 24 because that would qualify me for, you know, a few different competitions. This switch kind of went off in my brain where I was like, okay, I want to finish this under 24 hours. So I do realize I sound very nonchalant in the interview. The reality is I did have one of these big strategy documents where I planned out the whole race. I figured out what kind of food and liquids I'll have at these bigger aid stations, obviously. And I had this total time row where I calculated a roughly 29-hour finish time. So cutting that by almost 5 hours mid-race for no particular reason is pretty stupid. And the reason why is actually fatigue is not linear, meaning that if you do a 10% faster first half, that can lead to a 30 to 50% slower second half. And unfortunately for me, my first half was 20 to 30% faster. So you can imagine how the rest of the race will go. Anyway, back to the video. So we got to the first aid station with warm food, which was just at around marathon distance. at maybe 3:52. That was around the time when we parted ways with Peter. He was much faster at the aid stations. That was actually one of the advice he gave me, is like, don't spend too much time there. It's not good for your time. It's also not good for your body, because your body gets a bit comfy and then it's just harder to get going. Yeah, the next maybe 30 kilometers were fantastic. I had runner's high. I ran a sub 5 hour 50K. And I actually ended up running a sub 7 hour 70K. I knew that I'm doing really well so far. I was feeling fantastic. And I thought that this race was gonna be the race of my lifetime. Just around kilometer 70, 2 friends actually surprised me. And that was so cool. I really didn't expect them to. They came out, they had all these boards, everything. And yeah, we had a meal together. I said goodbye. And that was kilometer 73, and that's actually when the race started for me. All of a sudden, I felt this huge sharp pain in my left ankle. It's exactly the kind of pain I imagine I would feel if someone took a huge knife and just stabbed it into my ankle. 2 minutes pass and I feel the same exact sharp pain. And it was the type of sharp pain where I knew if I'm gonna feel it even just a handful of more times, I immediately have to stop, because something is either already, snapped or torn, or if not, then I'm on a way there. But for the next maybe 20, 25 kilometers, all I was doing is focusing on putting all the weight on my right leg and making sure I don't feel that pain in my left leg. But yeah, that wasn't ideal, because it was my right shin that was injured before the race. So I knew I can't really do this forever, but it was an okay kind of temporary solve to the problem.
Pain is getting pretty bad. It's not good to talk about it, or at least it doesn't feel like I should be talking about it too much. But yeah, kind of struggling at the moment. Got maybe 20K until the next big aid station. That's gonna be halfway. Let's see what happens.
The kilometers started getting a lot longer. I started getting pain in both ankles at this point, but it wasn't anything too crazy. It was definitely very uncomfortable, and I have a few of these videos on my phone where I'm just talking to it and saying like, yeah, I'm not in a good place, but it could be worse. It could be worse. We reached the bottom side of the lake, and the wind, which was kind of helping us until then, became a headwind, and it was just not nice. It was pretty dramatic. It was pretty bad. So fast forward maybe an hour or two, I'm just trooping through the wind and the light rain, and all I could think of is seeing Mark soon. Once I see him, that means there's not that much left from the race. And yeah, it's very awkward saying this because he's here in the room. But a few times when I was visualizing that, I actually teared up. It was very, very emotional for me. And I remember I was actually taking a video of myself saying, oh, I'm sure I'm gonna see Mark very soon. And then I saw Mark and we actually hugged, and it was great. And that was the beginning of the end, because that was when I really started struggling, not because of Mark, but because of the pain itself. Final third of the race, around 70 kilometers left. I was in excruciating pain. My ankles felt like they were just amputated and I'm just running on the bones itself. My stomach was still good, no throwing up. I was very tired, but I could feel that I could, keep going, and I still had a lot of time, but it was just, very depressing thinking about the fact that there's gonna be at least another maybe 10 hours of this. That was the point when time really started to warp, and perceiving it was very much like a Dali painting. long story short, we just took it, let's say 5 kilometers at a time, get to the next aid station. I don't really remember walking much. I remember at aid stations, my legs hurt so much that I couldn't start running immediately after the aid stations. So I was like hobbling, but in 100 meters, that hobbling turned into this very slow jog, and I could keep the jogging up. So I was pretty proud of that. I think the really dark, the absolute worst part started right before Balatonakaratja. This is the part where there's a pretty big uphill. I had nothing left in the tank. I started throwing up quite a bit. I remember the uphill was great. It was the first time I allowed myself to walk it, and walking it required slightly different muscles so I could rest the remaining muscles. And I remember it was on that hill at Balatonakaratja where I first started feeling lightheaded. After each aid station, it became a routine. Matt would wait for me like 200 meters before the aid station. He would walk me there. I would start with throwing up quickly. I would try and down a bit of water and a salt tab if I could, and then maybe eat a handful of whatever snacks they had there. And then he would walk another 200 meters with me, and then I would try and do that hobble run thing after that until the next aid station. I remember we kept coming up with all these psychological next milestones that we had to hit, and by far the biggest one we had planned, and it was going on for the past 30 kilometers, is the last aid station with hot food. It was at kilometer 176 maybe, and that really meant two things. One is I could replenish, I could get some carbs in, I could get some fluids in, some salt in, all of that. I could rest a proper big one, and it also meant there's less than a marathon distance left. And that was huge because in my mind, running a marathon was totally doable. It was gonna be okay. And I took my stuff, started going, and pain was awful, sun was up, I was feeling lightheaded, but I remember there were less than 25 kilometers left, and I got to this aid station. So that was the first point where I had to lay down on one of the benches, and I had to ask one of the staff to raise my legs because I just was feeling so lightheaded. I thought I might be in real trouble. But they kind of motivated me really nice, and I was pretty confident nothing was gonna go wrong. So I kept going, and I remember all of a sudden I just felt this awful, awful pain in my stomach. The worst kind of diarrhea of your life kind of feeling. And I remember looking back at the aid station, it was maybe 200 to 300 meters away. But I remember it was out of the question that I'll go back. There's no way I'm gonna go back, so I'll have to do it again. There was this railroad with two people from the staff, and I remember I asked them, like, where do you guys go to the toilet? I really need to go. They showed me this, it was like the size of maybe a basketball court, this grassy area. And they said, well, behind any tree. It was a very public, very humiliating situation. That was definitely something I'll never forget my whole life. And actually, while I was finishing and standing up and pulling everything up, I remember Mark had a phone in his hand, so there might be a chance we have that on record. Anyway, I remember linking up with him, and I remember me saying, oh, I still have so much time. I think I had like 7 or 8 hours at that point left, and only around like 22 kilometers to go. So I told him, okay, if your car is here, I would love to just chill in there for, 10, 20 minutes. I'll be re-energized and we'll absolutely crush the end. So the moment I got in the car, I wanted to lay down. I felt like I had a very strong fever. I had all these cold shivers, and I felt like it's the end of the world, to be honest. I remember opening the door of the car, so in case I have to throw up again, it's just a neck movement away. And I don't know what happened at that point, but I asked Mark to set an alarm for 15 minutes, and the plan was I'll sleep until then. Once the alarm is off, I'll get on the road. And during that 15 minutes, I was obviously miserable, but I remembered the hardest, toughest moment of my life, which was at a previous ultra. I was at UTH at kilometer 90, where I was even more done than here. I remember this was maybe 8 minutes into that 15-minute, block that we allocated for my sleep. And I was like, okay, I'm not even gonna wait for the remaining, 7 minutes. I need to get up and I need to get back on the road. I wanna get this done. I don't wanna wait any longer. The sooner I finish, the sooner the pain ends. And as I'm putting my shoes on, everything hurts, but once I put my right leg down on the ground, it became just the most intense pain I've felt in my whole life, without exaggeration. It really felt like someone was doing surgery on my leg without any anesthesia or anything like that. And I knew I was in serious trouble. I somehow hobbled, and I was really hoping that through the next 100 to 200 meters, I would do the same kind of hobble run, hopefully like some blood goes back into the legs and that kind of warms up something, maybe gets better. Well, that didn't happen, but the plan was Matt was gonna take the car, go to the next aid station, wait for me there. As I was hobbling, that was the point where I realized I probably won't be able to finish the race. It was really heartbreaking because we put the distance and we put the finish line into Google Maps, and it showed that it only takes 3.5 hours. So I would have had twice the time to finish it just walking. But every single step I felt like, there's surgery on my leg happening. And I walked for 2 kilometers. I met up with Mark, and deep inside I knew at that point that this is not going to work out. I chipped in for the next kind of like gate, and that was at kilometer 191, so less than 20 kilometers left. I called my massage therapist called Levi. He's a very experienced ultra runner as well, and he gave me some really good advice, and some advice that I immediately knew is the right advice and the one that I should follow, which is, you can be the tough guy and you could do it, but you're really risking permanent damage on your leg, and it's probably not worth it. After that call, I asked the staff there to call an ambulance for me, and that's when I had to say that I'm officially not finishing the race, I'm DNFing, and I was really crushed. I was so angry at myself because I had all that time left, and I couldn't use it because I couldn't stand up. And the ambulance came, and the lady from the ambulance took a look at my leg. She said there's probably a torn or ruptured tendon in my knee. It was all bulged up, like a pretty big swell on there. And anytime I basically just looked at my leg, it was a 10 out of 10 pain. I can't even describe it. So that was it. That was the race. And then I was taken to the hospital. But long story short, Mark saved the day again, fetched me with a car, and we were on the way back to Budapest, where, I remember the adrenaline kind of died off, and I realized I was probably 15,000 calories short, so I was extremely hungry, extremely thirsty. I was still wearing the sweaty clothes I've been wearing for the past 20 hours. I got home, I couldn't leave the bed, I was out of it. The next day I got a second perspective on my life from another doctor. Basically they said, things might be torn, but we can't really do anything about it. We wouldn't recommend surgery anyways, so just rest it, be gentle with it, and don't run for a while. So the day after the race was probably the hardest part, because I was still in so much pain that it was unbearable, and I felt like I just really was a disappointment to all the friends and family who were supporting me the whole time. And I was just thinking of all the money I invested into the training and the competition and the time and everything, and it was all for nothing. And luckily, talking to the friends and just reflecting a bit, that really changed in the past 2 days, and it changed into almost like a happy ending, to be honest, because I realized that this DNF really made me reflect on the whole race, And I analyzed every single aspect of it since, and I realized that I was doing so many things incorrectly, starting from the pacing, starting from not strengthening my ankles and knees before the race. I remember more experienced runners telling me to do that, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I never did those things because I thought I could do it anyway. I never DNF'd before, so I thought if you just run more, you'll get further and further. That might be true to some extent, but at these distances, I had to realize it's much more about other things than running that can help you prepare. So I'm seeing this now, and why I think this is actually a really big blessing in disguise is failing made me analyze my mistakes, and me seeing these mistakes and having the motivation to work on them, that will make me a better runner. And now I have the chance to actually get better, get stronger, and go into the next race knowing that I have a chance because I did the preparation properly, and reaching those goals, reaching the next 200-kilometer goal, or doing 100-mile with a bunch of vert, that's just going to be so much sweeter because now I know how it feels to not being able to finish a race. So overall, I'm super happy. I'm super content with this, and I can't wait to get back to running. Just dropped my sunglasses in some bullshit.